everybody understand, because we've had open meeting, we may not have had the level of public participation that we can when we are doing it virtually. So if you can try to rename your screen so that people can understand who it is. So there's a couple of people. I see Michael, I see Joycelyn, I see Michelle on a phone. If you can, when you speak, try to identify yourself, because not everybody can either recognize you, your voice, and or see you, and understand at some point what we do here today is important and consequential. And at some point, if somebody wants to look at it, they'll be able to see it on our YouTube channel. So it's public in a kind of a way that prior meetings have not been. Other thing I want to share with you, we have one action item. And then we have a closed session, and then our staff have worked hard about how we can sort of move into a closed session without logging on and logging back in. So kudos to the staff for trying to support us and make it easier to do. And we hope it goes well. And thanks for everybody's patience in this.
I'm not going to be able to do this right now. Damn it.
So anyway, if you're not talking or presenting, I encourage people to mute yourself. And we will call the meeting to order. And I think the first agenda item is a roll call. So Teresa, if you want to check in and see who from the committee is here.
Okay. Joycelyn. John. Michael.
Here.
Thank you. Rita's absent today. Brent.
Right.
Ron.
Teresa, I'm here. My mic was muted.
Thank you. Okay, we have a quorum with yourself, Brent.
Okay.
So we can start. Thank you.
I'm here.
And
Michelle. Yeah, I got Michelle.
So the committee members here, just Brent, Joycelyn, Michael, and Michelle. So
Yes.
Let's go to the next item. You want to show us the agenda, then we can have a motion to approve it? Somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
this is Michael. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Joycelyn, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have approved agenda. Let's go to the next item. We have minutes. You want to show us the minutes? You received this material before, but wow, last time we met was October. Hey, it's no big deal, but I noticed my name is misspelled. I've seen it several different ways over the years, so.
No, we will endeavor to correct that, Brent,
In the minutes?
in the minutes. Yeah,
In the body. So,
it's in the body of the minutes. So
Okay,
it-
sorry about that.
We'll correct that, Teresa. Thank you.
no problem. So, somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Joycelyn, I move.
Second,
Michael, I second.
any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. The next agenda item, I am going to turn it over to Steve. And I want to thank Steve for drafting this reset memo, just because I thought it was important for us to kind of figure out where we were and what we needed to be thinking about and acting on in 2021. So Steve, you want to take it away?
Yeah, and so hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a look at this. I mean, this is always one of the dangers that you have when you ask me to do a memo like this. My interest and my degree in history always will dictate that I will go back to the past and bring us forward. And so what I started with was going back to 2014 and talking about the initial capital improvement and replacement plan that really did sort of cast the die to move us forward. And then on each of the subsequent bullets, I pretty much took a year and hit the significant highlights that occurred each year of the project. So we did really, as a board and staff, start evaluating things back in 2014. And then as we kind of figured out what it was we were going to be doing, we moved forward with planning. We put it before the voters. Once we realized where the money was coming from, we started working with our design team and our construction manager and started using the construction manager at risk building delivery system. We also chose at this time to accelerate the building program so so things would get done more quickly. And and then we actually started working on projects, and that's what the next series of bullets are, telling the projects that we worked with. And in our current year, we have 7 projects that are completed or underway. Moving to page 2 of this, some work has been done on Grain Valley, North Oak, Lee Summit, and Riverside. The only projects that are not substantially underway include East Independence and the maintenance for the projects at the Harvey Jones Building in Smithville. Although some Smithville has actually already been worked on. We replaced the parking lot, for example, at Smithville, which is something that's important. So looking sort of at the bottom line, about 88% of the entire capital plan, if you look at the capital plan dashboard, about 88% of the entire capital improvement and replacement program is either underway or contracted or in some way fixed in by the guaranteed maximum price. So why is that important? Well, that means that there's only a 12% variance in what could happen in terms of things costing more or the unforeseen. There's only a 12% chance of the project left that's unforeseen. And frankly, with the exception of the Lee Summit branch, most of this is new construction. And as we've talked about throughout this project, and if you've ever watched HGTV or any of those home improvement shows, you know that renovations tend to be more uncertain than new construction. And we really only have one renovation that's left. So that's a good thing. So as we start moving forward, there are really two big decision items that are next on the plate. Well, actually, I should take that back. There are 2 big decision items that we're working on that we need to be focused on. And actually, we'll touch on both of these a little bit today. One of them is North Oak and the other one's Lee Summit branch. In terms of North Oak, we've been struggling in terms of figuring out exactly what we want to do with North Oak. And part of this had to do with the location of the replacement for the Boardwalk branch. The further east the location of the Boardwalk branch was, the less likely that North Oak could stay exactly where it was. So for instance, some of you might remember that the second most popular position to place the new Boardwalk branch was right on Platte Purchase Road, which is, I mean, if you're driving on Highway 152, the exits go North Oak, 169, Platte Purchase Road. And so if we were to put a branch as close as that, to North Oak, it wouldn't make sense to maintain it where it was. So once we actually began to iron down or nail down, exactly where Boardwalk was going to be, which is now being called Green Hills because it's on Green Hills, then it would make sense for us to start looking for the property for the North Oak branch. And North Oak is a little tricky because you can't go too far south because you start running into the catchment for Antioch and Riverside. If you go too far north, you start running into the catchment for actually the new Green Hills because of Shoal Creek Parkway and Smithville. If you go too far east, you start running into Antioch and Woodneath. You go too far west, you start running into Green Hills. So there's a little bit of a Goldilocks zone. It is important to have a branch here because of density and all of that, but you have to be careful that you're not moving too far, too close to one of our existing locations. And so after a lot of work and consideration, one of the things we discovered is that in terms of density and mass transit and all those other locations, the existing lot where North Oak is currently located may actually be the best place for a future North Oak branch. And so one of the things we started doing is working on a plan to replace the North Oak branch, fix all the problems that we have with the building by replacing the building completely. And we believe that we can get more square footage on the existing property without buying any more property there. And we actually have a site plan to show you that we think can accomplish that a little bit later in the meeting. The next big thing that we need to be talking about is Lee Summit Branch. As you know, we've been doing a round robin with Lee Summit, that we built East Lee Summit. We moved Colburn Road to East Lee Summit. Now we're building Colburn Road. Colburn Road is just about finished. And once it's finished, we're going to be moving Lee Summit essentially to Colburn Road. And then we will be ready to renovate the Lee Summit branch. It took a lot longer. One of the things that we really needed to do in order to do all the things we wanted to do at Lee Summit was acquire just a little bit of additional land to make there be enough space and to do all the things that we needed to do. It was a lot harder to get the real estate and the shopping center owners on board and get them to agree to this. But what we've come up with is a property swap. And there's actually, this is the decision item that Brent was talking about. There's a real estate contract that we would like to ask the committee to recommend to the full board. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to swap a little bit of our property for a little bit of their property. And we're going to be able to get what it is that we need to do in exchange for giving them a little bit more of what they were wanting in terms of the larger footprint. Again, I've got a site plan that I can show you for this. And I think once we get this, we are going to be in really good shape. Now, this is all the good news. The potential bad news, if you will, for Lee Summit is that we've discovered that we're going to need to work to flatten the parking lot a little bit. The parking lot's very steep. In fact, Cody just recently had an incident report I saw come in because he had an incident where a book cart rolled away from him at Lee Summit and just completely got away. And there are ADA issues essentially with our parking lot that we were not fully aware of. And so flattening the parking lot a little bit is going to cost a little bit more money than what we thought it's going to be. It's going to come in over target, but I don't think that coming in over target for Lee Summit is going to end up hurting the overall budget. But I'll show you this new site plan a little bit later in the meeting. Those are sort of the front burner issues. Sort of the medium burner issues are Riverside, East Lee Summit, and Grain Valley projects. So Grain Valley is another one. We're actually going to talk about Grain Valley in closed session. At the time of the writing of this memo, we'd been sort of spinning our wheels on property acquisition in Grain Valley. Initially, we were going to be part of a new civic campus that is being built in the city of Grain Valley. The funding for that did not materialize, and so we started looking to acquire our own property, frankly, because we don't like renting if we can avoid it. And right now, we're in lease space. The landlord has been okay, not great, but okay. And so, but we would like to sort of control our own destiny. We have been able to find, I think, a couple of properties that are, I mean, we've looked at about 20 properties, but I think we found a couple of properties that will meet our need, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in closed session. The East Independence location is one that this committee needs to talk about, I would suggest. That there is substantial population growth and density that's going to be occurring between the catchment areas and has occurred between the catchment areas for North Independence, South Independence, Colburn Road, and Blue Springs North and Blue Springs South. In fact, one of the things Katina has told me is that some of the census tracts with the lowest account penetration is in this area, suggesting that this is an area where we could use a service outlet. One of the issues that we've run into, though, is that most people have thought that the growth would be driven by population growth in the Little Blue Valley, and that is not occurring. So there are some ideas that staff have. I do think that the creation of the Farview location, the joint cooperative with the Community Services League and the Fort Osage School District has taken a little bit of the pressure off for an East Independence branch, but it hasn't completely eliminated that pressure. So it's just something that we need to talk about. I think my point is that if we're going to be moving forward with a brand new construction, we can start moving forward on that. If, on the other hand, the feeling of the board and the committee is that Farview meets the demand of an East Independence branch, then we can start that political conversation as well. But this is a conversation that I think we should have. But not a lot of work has been done. I have talked with some people about locating an East Independence branch on shared property of another community organization that has a similar mission. And so there has been some talk like that, but we haven't gotten very far beyond that. Riverside, of course, is a conversation that we've had many, many times in the past. And I think the committee still needs to have a conversation about what ultimately to do with Riverside. I think staff, in looking at Riverside, understand that, all things being equal, we would always desire to have a new building as opposed to a renovated building, in part because, it's easier to maintain and cheaper to operate and all of those things. And particularly given the Riverside building itself, which is sort of built into the side of a hill, we always have water issues there, and there are some other minor things. But the bigger thing with Riverside is that the conversation that we've had with the city has always involved the idea of essentially being able to do this above and beyond the current budget for the building project. So this would be something that's kind of using some funds from the building project, but also going above and beyond. And certainly given what our revenue projections, our revenue certainty, I guess I should say, was until very, very recently, it did not make any sense at all for us to be looking to bring on additional expenses. Things are beginning to clear up, but things still aren't exceptionally clear for either us or Riverside. The conversation, the city of Riverside does not seem to be chomping at the bit to move forward on this as they had been in the past. And part of that is because they also have revenue uncertainties just like we do. But that is something that is, sort of middle burner. So the three projects, and actually Grain Valley is beginning to move closer to a front burner now, but the three projects that the committee should probably be looking at discussing, making sure that we want to do and how we want to do them, Riverside, East Independence, and Grain Valley. And then the two sort of front burner issues where we're going to be bringing you GMPs and things like that fairly soon are North Oak and Lee Summit. So that's kind of a quick rundown of the memo.
Thanks, Steve. I want to note that John Laney joined the meeting. So good morning, John.
Good morning. Thank you. Sorry to be so late.
Anybody have any questions about the memo? Because in some senses it serves as a backdrop or a introduction to some of our later agenda items. Okay, Steve, you want to provide the next agenda item, which is the update?
Construction update, yeah. so we will go to that. And Cody, if we can move to the what's the status? And this is the updated building committee dashboard. Now, one of the things, actually go back to the building committee, there we go. One of the things you might have noticed at the most recent board meeting is that this has been formatted a little bit differently. And this is really based on a conversation that Brent and I had back in December. Again, because about 88% of everything that we're working on is either done under contract or in some way the trains left the station. So what we did is we reformatted the projects. So now basically they're in an order of the ones that are black background are done. The contract signed, all paid for, everything's completely finished. The green background means that they are in some way, shape, or form underway, but not complete yet. And the white background are things that are still pending, that there's no GMP and there's no significant work. There's some work, but not significant work that's gone toward the projects. The other thing that we did to this in terms of reformatting, I mean, we still have our land acquisition over on the right-hand side. We did add in sort of pending costs as well, so that you can begin to see that 55.1 million that's at the very bottom is the total cost of what's outstanding, which also includes, I mean, everything that's there has resources allocated for it as well. And you can see that if you look at the balance sheet, the capital projects balance sheet, you'll see that the fund balance there is right around 55 million. I think it's 53 million. And so again, showing that we're essentially on target or pretty close to on target with everything that we need for this. Yeah. So a little bit of a reformat, and hopefully this kind of helps you kind of be able to see what's in the rear view mirror and not have to be concerned as much with that. I mean, because really the work that's left to do, I mean, obviously there's oversight in the green bar areas, but the work that really has to be done is what's in the white bar area. So, and you know, in terms of big benchmarks, I mean, I sort of told you that bottom line, but the other thing that you're always wanting to look at is if you look at sort of midway in the page below the spreadsheet, you'll see $84.5 million underneath the column that said J.E. Dunn BC 125 2018. And then over at the side, you'll see $84.5 million under the J.E. Dunn current, which basically means that our construction costs are exactly where they need to be, including the allocated funds. And then the 2.2 million underneath is the soft cost contingency on construction. So it's pretty easy to kind of see in one place what resources are allocated and what resources are left to be spent. So with that, next we'll go to the what's the status, but I want to pause for half a second and make sure that everybody's comfortable with the dashboard. You saw this at the building committee meeting, but we didn't go into great detail about what those changes were. So. Okay, hearing nothing, let's go to the what's the status slides. So here's what's the status for 2021, and next slide, please. This is what we did last month. Parkville, we worked on the Parkville, so this is December. What we did, the Parkville recommissioning, continued work on Colburn Road, and work package 11, which is Grandview and South Independence, continued work there as well. Next slide. What we're doing this month, Parkville was opened. Parkville was opened on January the 5th, and South Independence is substantially complete as of January 11th. And as we'll see on the next slide, targeting an opening for South Independence on February the 11th. And then Grandview's substantial completion on February the 17th. So all of those moving along quite well, I would say. I think the next slide shows some images. Yeah. So this is construction update images for Colburn Road. As you can see, the outside looks like a building now with a parking lot. And the inside finishes aren't in clearly, but a lot of the interior work is well underway at Colburn Road. One thing I'll say about Colburn Road is that it feels like Colburn Road has been closed for a long time. It really hasn't. I mean, we actually, as I recall, we closed and moved Colburn Road right at the beginning of the stay-at-home orders of the pandemic, right around March. So it hasn't been closed for a full year yet, or it's coming right up on 1 year of closing. But without other activities, it's kind of hard to judge. I mean, it's really the one big thing that's been going on. And so it's a little bit more front and center. Okay, so the next slide is South Independence, I believe. Yeah, this is South Independence, and you can see that the finishes are in here and a lot of the furniture as well. Most of those bookshelves are empty right now. Well, they were in the picture. They're not empty now. But you can see the LVT that goes into the entryway for the programming room, the new display case, the new restrooms, which of course are ADA, meet ADA standards and new updates and upgrades there. The next slide, I believe, is Grandview, if I remember right. Yes. So this is Grandview. And we really need a before and after picture for Grandview because it does not look like the same building anymore, not even close to the same building. But as you can see, we moved the front down toward toward Booth. That used to be if you look in the lower left-hand corner where the glass front is, all of that was a landscape bed for the most part. And so we've moved the building significantly closer to the front to get more space. You can see in the middle upper picture, that's the programming room. And excuse me, the lower right-hand corner is that corner with all the glass that looks out toward Main Street. As you can see, some of the finishes are going in, but still most of the finishes are still to come, the carpeting and such. So I think, Cody, is that the last of the photos? I was thinking it was. Yeah. And so one more thing before we go into the maps of the project updates, I would like to share with you just the time lapse. Brent asked me to do this, and so I can do this. I'd like to share the time lapse photo of the. Here we go. Let me get back to where I need to be so I can get control of this. And these are a couple of the time lapses of the construction. So. This is actually the time lapse photo of Colburn Road, starting at when it was, the old building was taken down. And so this is about a year's worth of work. Actually, the time lapse started, as I remember, in late May, early June is when we started capturing this. So September now. And this is into November. In December, they got the asphalt down, so people started parking their vehicles in our parking lot. And December, with the all up. And this is the 23rd, January 23rd, as it looks. So that is Colburn Road, and I'm going to see if I can get onto. Let's see if I can get onto Yeah, there's Withers. Withers is a little bit less interesting because it's completely done. I'm going to see if I can get on to Woodneath. It's less, it's not as long, not as long a video. Because there's less work that's been going on, so. So this is Woodneath, and obviously you can see all the dirt work and earthwork that's occurring, but then every so often you start seeing cranes, and those cranes that pop in there are the footings and foundations that's going in. So, and you can actually, if you start where I'm pointing here, I think you can see that. You can see it's really flattened out right there. And so it's moving along, that's moving along very nicely, I think, in terms of where we are at Woodneath. Of course, we're in a time when it's not particularly very good to build. So those were the time lapses that we have so far, and I can share those periodically. Not a lot changes from month to month, but when you begin to look at an entire project like we did with Colburn Road, you can sort of see the entire encompassment of that. The next thing on the agenda was a Google map that I put together, and this really does. So Cody, if you're able to share that again, we can put this up. And this was actually in your board packet. So if you actually cut and paste that giant long URL, you'll get a copy of this map as well. And this goes along well with the memo that we talked about earlier, but it shows all the different projects that are going on in the library district. And so on the screen, what you'll see is I color coded them. And so the blue icons are projects that are under construction, underway. Things are actually happening with those. The green are under construction, are under contract, but pending construction. So that's, for example, like the Blue Ridge branch, where we have the GMP locked in, but we still haven't actually started construction there yet, in part because we're waiting for Grandview to be finished before we start, Blue Ridge, because they are very close to one another. And then the yellow push pins, the yellow identifiers there are projects that are pending. And so this is actually a live map. So if you can actually zoom in, zoom out, things like that with this project, if that's something that you are interested in doing. So this is just something that you might find useful. I think Brent, when he and I were talking about this, Brent found it useful to be able to show not just all of the projects that are still pending, but also the projects that are the scope and width and breadth of the projects that are spread all over the library district. So I think that concludes what I was wanting to share in terms of the construction update.
Any questions for Steve? Appreciate the presentations. I think they help understand what's going on. I'm captivated actually by the time-lapse photography, but that's just me.
Yeah. Just a comment. This Google Maps really helpful, just to be able to look down and see where everything's, what's going on. For me personally, I love the Google Map presentation and of course everything else. So thanks, Steve, for bringing this up. I think it's really helpful just to be able to see what we're doing. So.
No, you're most welcome, Michael. In normal days, in normal times, we probably would have had a couple or three tours where we all would have gotten a van and driven around and looked at all of these places,
right.
Which would have helped you become more acclimated or a better understanding of the projects. But this is something we can do for now. And then as things change, then we'll be able to get back in the van and start doing those tours too. So.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Steve and staff that your progress on the capital plan has been outstanding. It has not really, we haven't had much hiccups, few surprises, and few things that we haven't been able to address adequately. And I just also wanted to say that and the excitement for the libraries, and at least here in Lee Summit, for when they finally open is huge. So the public is anticipating this very highly.
Steve, do you want to take the next item, which actually I think involves Lee Summit?
It does. So the next item that we have is Work Package 15 Lee Summit. And as we talked about earlier, we have been wanting to trade some property with the shopping center owners so that we could get the footprint that we need to expand the building. And initially we went to them and just wanted to buy it from them. And they said, well, what if we traded property? Because actually we would like to have control of a part of the property that you own, and we can just give you the property that you want. And this took a long time. I'm making this very easy, but I mean, it took almost a year for us to get to the right person within the shopping center company to even start the conversations. But this is where we ultimately landed. And there were some concerns initially. So if we go to hopefully the next slide is the site plan. Yeah, it is. So this is a site plan, and site plans are kind of a little messy, but it's essentially oriented. So north is toward the top. Our building you can see that there's sort of like this green triangle shape and a blue triangle shape. The green triangle shape is right up to the north of our existing building. The blue triangle shape and not what we own. The blue triangle shape we do own, and that was what the shopping center company was interested in trading. Initially, I was I was very hesitant, because what this actually meant was that we were potentially trading away our driveway, our independent driveway that actually gets out of the shopping center. Our Boardwalk branch has a similar situation where we don't actually have an independent driveway. And this has been an issue in the past where actually the shopping center owner actually makes us pay for an easement every year at Boardwalk. They don't necessarily maintain the shared drive as well as they need to. And so we've learned some very valuable lessons about having shared drives. And it really did dictate a lot of what we wanted to do moving forward with this. So before we really went into a lot of negotiations, though, I did talk with Brent, I talked with Trent when he was on the board, and sort of laid this out. And their recommendation was, well, you've learned a lot, so why don't you just put that in the sale contract and see if they'll agree to it, which is what we did. So part of what's in the sale contract is that we will always have access to this driveway with no compensation, that the shopping center will be expected to maintain the driveway to our standards, meaning if it gets full of potholes and things like that, that we can fix it and charge them theoretically, but that they will be responsible for it, and it's their property, but we will hold them accountable to it, and we will have continued access to it. Two other conditions that we put on there. One of the reasons why they want this corner is that they want to put a drive-up coffee shop kiosk on this in this space. And so another thing that we told them was that we would any building that occurred in here, we had to approve that building to ensure that we had appropriate sight lines so people could still see our building, but that we had to be able to approve that. That's in the contract as well. Just trying to think. I think those are sort of the major points of the contract, but ultimately it ends up that we give them that blue purple and we get the green in exchange. And it doesn't cost anything, but we also put in writing that they will maintain it, that they will give us access to it, and anything that they build in there, we have to be able to approve it to make sure that they don't violate our sight lines. The next few slides are the actual real estate contract. Phil's been over the contract. He's basically what Phil says with real estate contracts like these is that he says, he'll read them over, make sure that they're okay, make sure that there's no poison pills in them and things like that. And then the thing that he always punts on is the legal description, the minutes and degrees and all of that. And he says we have to make sure that we have some sort of surveyor or someone do that, which we have. So basically Phil said there was no reason that the library could not execute this. Staff feels confident that we've got all the protections that we need for this. Based on our experiences with our other properties. And so with that, we do have a recommendation. I think there's a slide eventually that'll come up with staff's recommendation on this, which is that we recommend that the committee recommend to the full board a motion authorizing staff to execute the contract to swap property with the Summit Shopping Center.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Mr. Joyce.
I'm presuming you're making the motion that's on the screen, Joycelyn?
Yes, the recommended to the full board authorizing staff to execute the contract to swap property with the Summit Shopping Center.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Second by John Laney. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a question for Steve. That this project is near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
My main concern is this swap and these swap and these plans adequate for our current and possibly future needs at our number one circulating site?
Future is hard to say. Current, definitely. Part of what the green triangle to the north of the library does is it provides the space for us to build out so that we can move. So the building becomes closer to 20,000 square feet, which is what it needs to be as opposed to the 17, actually closer to 22,000 square feet. It also provides the footprint in the proper location that we can build in a drive-up window. And possibly, we're configuring the building to be able to have a drive-up materials return as well in that same area. Large programming space, multiple community rooms, natural lighting, it allows us to move the entrance a little bit, but still have a lot of inside and outside, inside natural light that we're looking to employ. And because because when we do the property swap, it's also going to change the drive lane orientation just a little bit, but just enough to decrease the raceway that occurs right now on that property. Right now, what tends to happen is that people who are in the strip mall part of the shopping center for some reason want to try to get their car up to 70 miles an hour before they leave the shopping center. Yeah. And they're always driving super fast through that area. And so the reorientation due to the property swap in some part is going to make the lane a little bit curvier, include some pedestrian crossings and sort of rumble areas, which is going to slow down the traffic, which is going to be a great benefit. So yeah.
Finish. You can, I guess, what we're talking about here is basically a new construction. We're reorienting where the parking lot is and adding functional space where you used to back up to basically dirt. Used to be like is that correct? Because it backed up to land that was unusable prior to this.
Yeah, so, and actually that land that's backed up on the west side, if you will, the back of what would be considered the back of the library. That's still going to be dirt. And in fact, we're actually going to increase that a little bit so that our overall increasing of impervious surface doesn't increase, meaning we don't have to create detention basins and things like that. We'll actually create a little bit more outdoor space. But the actual expansion of the building, you remember correctly, the original idea was to do the expansion of the building on the west side. What we discovered is that it was actually, if we could acquire the property, which is what we're talking about right now, if we could acquire the property, it was actually easier for us to expand on the north side, but still do all of those things that you just said. Just do them on the north side instead of the west side.
Okay. I like it.
This is Brent and Schandelmeyer, and if the change of ownership by the shopping center, these conditions would roll forward to the new owner.
Correct. That's the way that the sale is written.
Okay, thank you. And for purposes, Steve identified Phil Grubaugh is our library's attorney. And so the Phil mentioned was our attorney that reviewed the contract. So
thank you, Brent.
Any other questions?
Yes, concerning visibility from 50 Highway and from the frontage road that's in between 50 Highway and the library, how is that going to be? It has to be improved because it's very poor now. Does this plan allow for improvement in that visibility?
Yes. Well, I mean, the overall construction plan does. The plan for the property swap, in section 9, subsection 4, any kiosk to be constructed in the future must be mutually approved by both parties. This mutual agreement shall refer to, but is not limited to, size, height, shape, and location of the architecture. In other words, view shed. So basically like I said, what the shopping center really wants to do is they want to build a scooters drive-through coffee shop in that area. And we've said that's fine, but it's not going to be 2 stories tall and completely obscure our building. And so that's what this line 4 does. If they come back with something that completely obscures our building, then we're going to reject it. And that's part of the condition of the sale, and we would be allowed to. So that's one piece. The other piece is that as we're looking at, as I've seen some preliminary plans for construction, I've also seen some monument signage. You are really going to like what we're doing in terms of this drive-up window, in terms of it in the drive-up window and the construction of the drive lane is actually, it's hard to picture. You'll see it soon, but it actually increases visibility of the building as well. Kind of creates what the architects are calling a billboard effect. Don't think about ugly billboards on interstates, but it creates what they're calling a billboard effect that will begin to make our building much more visible.
Any other questions?
Thank you. That was good.
Okay. Good discussion. I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? It appears to me the motion passed unanimously. So thanks to the staff for concluding what a simple land swap might look like, but take a year to accomplish. So anyway, want to go to the next item, Steve?
Yeah, next item is work package 12 North Oak. And as we talked about in the reset memo, it took a while for us to begin to identify exactly the right place for the replacement North Oak branch. North Oak does need to be replaced, though. I mean, those people on the committee who've been here for a while know that we have peered and mudjacked North Oak on 2 separate occasions. The building itself just is not built correctly, and it needs to be replaced, particularly for an operation such as ours, where books are heavy. And so we looked north, south, east, west, tried to make sure we weren't over encroaching on our catchment area, and eventually came to the conclusion that where North Oak is located may actually be the best place for the North Oak branch for the next 15, 20 years or so, particularly when you take into account population density, mass transit, proximity to schools and things like that. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see this is a model that SDA and Helix have been working on. So this property right here is the North Oak property. On the right-hand side is North Oak Trafficway. So if you know North Oak right now, the building essentially sets in the upper right corner and goes across the upper boundary of the property. What we're suggesting that we do is that we move the building to the back of the property. You'll also notice that there's sort of like a diagonal dotted line that runs through the property from the top to the bottom. I believe that identifies a water source, which has been a huge problem for our existing building. It's the reason why we have to keep peering and mud jacking, is because of that water source. And so what we're doing is we're moving the building away from that, and then we're going to account for it more correctly. And even with it being under a parking lot, it's much easier to deal with than it being under the building. And so then what we do is we move the North Oak branch into what is the southwest corner of the property. And what we're proposing is using the contour of the earth that's there, and creating essentially what the architects are calling a split level. So if you look at the yellow and tan boxes that are up at the top, you can see that it's essentially a split level, that we've got two different, we've got one level that's on grade, and then we've also got a lower level and an upper level that's there. Now, those of you who know me know that there are issues with libraries being on multiple levels. Everything from ADA accessibility to long-term staffing. But one of the things that we really liked about how this was working is that it really had a feel based on the preliminary studies, not unlike the Redbridge branch, which also kind of has a step down, split level feel to it, if you can kind of imagine it that way a little bit. And so the idea is that the service desk would be right in the front door, right when you walk in. And then we would be able to put additional services in the two splits based on, areas where people don't need as much easy access. So for example, we'd be putting things, one of the things we've been talking about is doing things like putting children, like the picture book collection, for example, on grade, in part because it's a real pain for parents and grandparents with strollers, with elevators and stairs and things like that. So we'd put picture books on grade, but then we'd put, things like the traditional nonfiction collection and things like that, perhaps on one of those splits where people might be able to more easily get to them. So this became the plan, very workable. I mean, we've actually run through 2 or 3 different footprints using the existing property. And of course, the other big advantage to doing this is that there is some cost savings in doing this. We don't have to look at acquiring property, and if we don't acquire property, then we gain about $750,000 back into the budget, which of course we could use, we could use if we need to buy an elevator, which we could use to help shore up that water source that runs through the property, all of those sorts of things. So this is what we've started working on. We don't have any real solid plans to show other than this. But the main thing that I wanted to show was that it appears to be very possible and possibly the right thing to do, just to rebuild exactly where we are.
So this is Brent Schondelmeyer. I want to say this is an important point to pause and see if this idea meets with the building committee's approval, or see if we have thoughts or considerations before we spend any more time on architectural fees. and for a place that we're not going to build. So, Michael, I know
This
you
is
had
Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle, please.
Well, since this is right down the street from my house, this makes me extremely happy. Moving this branch was kind of unsettling to me because it's the location within walking distance of a lot of neighborhoods. Yes, North Oak is busy, but it's on a bus line, and it's just in a really great spot. And moving it anywhere, I just really felt was going to I felt like the population around where that branch is right now, I just felt like we were going to be doing a disservice to some people. And so this, I think, is fantastic. I'm sorry, the dog agrees or doesn't agree.
Michelle, I'm going to take that as agreement, okay?
I had a couple of practical questions and concerns. I like the idea about moving the building. Have some concerns about the split level, having spent quite a lot of time at the Raytown branch and having to deal with a ramp and having things on split level. I understand the buildings are set up differently, but I do have concerns if people with wheelchairs have to use a stair and an elevator, having the things like power outages. How do we move people if there's a power outage, if there's no ramp? But I don't like ramps. That's one issue. It's just a practical thing. I don't have anything against split levels. I just don't like the other logistics that it causes. It means that, I don't know. I just have some reservations about the split level practically. If those practical things are adequately addressed, then I don't have an issue with it. I believe the staff can adequately surveil the space and maintain sight lines. I'm just, I don't know. I don't like elevators being the only way to transport people with disabilities or with mobility issues.
Yeah, talking to the converted on that one. I mean, as you know, Joycelyn, I spent a good 20 years pushing somebody in a wheelchair, and it's not necessarily the support that you get or lack of support when an elevator doesn't work. But sometimes, what if the wheelchair stops working and it happens to be one of those super heavy power wheelchairs? And so, yeah, I mean, I understand that completely. I'm not trying to negotiate, but it does occur to me at this particular point. You're making a really, really good point. And I also know that natural gas and diesel generators are not terribly expensive. And we could look, because of part of the savings that we're getting, because we're not having to purchase the property, we might be able to look at installing a generator that would be able to help accommodate some additional assistance in such situations.
Michael, John, any comments?
Yeah, Michael, I have some concerns about this property, and just as I'm looking at this whole layout, I used to live in Gladstone, and when I lived over there, I didn't like going to this library because it was a hassle to get into and a hassle to get out of. And so I don't remember it having an exiting driveway. Did it always have an exit driveway or not?
It always did,
Okay.
but the building kind of obscured it, and so a lot of people didn't know it was there.
I didn't know it was there, honestly. But
Yeah.
my other concern is I don't know how much money we spent over the course of years with this water issue, but I'm assuming it was a bit. And as I look at this extended detention runoff basin, question mark, or underground detention, I guess my concern is what issues are we going to have with water down the road? I know we can't, probably declare what that will be, but if we rebuild another building on this piece of property, are we just heading for a lot of other long range problems with the water issue? And I think water's been a serious issue. So that's my concern. As Michelle said, I know this library is probably near and dear to people that live in the area, but you know, I don't want to throw good money after bad or so on and so forth.
John, comments? Any comments?
No, I don't have.
Okay. This is Brent Schoenemeyer. Hey, Steve, I'm going to suggest it might be helpful to see if we can get our architects in our next building committee meeting and sort of talk through some of these things. They may have answers or responses that might be helpful to us, or if they can hear what's on our mind, that they can take that into account.
Yeah, most certainly not a problem with that at all. And I think that well, one of the things Jake is on the phone, and he actually made a comment to me to remind people that, you know, certainly the way that we site buildings, the way that we manage our buildings are much different and much better than what we did when we built our original building. So yes, Michael, you are absolutely right. We put a lot of good money into this building to try to stabilize it. But the bottom line is we built over a creek.
Yeah.
And the engineers and the previous generation didn't reinforce that creek well enough. And so our feeling is that if we make sure that we do the right thing, don't put the building over it, which is the heaviest thing, then we should be able to avoid the situation. We know where the water is coming from. I mean, in a lot of the situations where I've had and where we've worked in the past, we just know there's a water issue. We just don't know where it's coming from. In this case, we know where it's coming from. And we also have been doing a much better job in terms of the way we site our buildings, the way we prepare our buildings for construction. I feel like this is something that we can address. But I also think that you all should feel comfortable with that as well. So I was just checking the Skype real quick. I'm sorry, the Zoom real quick to make sure that none of our architects or anybody was on the phone. I told them not to be. That's on me that they're not joining us today. But we'll make sure that they're on the next call and we can talk a whole lot more about this.
Okay, thank you.
Good discussion, and we'll pick it up at our next building committee meeting. I think on our agenda, we're now scheduled to go into a closed session. So I'm going to ask staff to sort of talk us through how that's going to transpire.
So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get the motion for going into closed session, and then we'll talk. Then we'll have Cody and Brian talk through the logistics.
Okay, there's a motion on the screen if somebody wants to make that.
I will move to go into closed session in accordance with the information we've been presented on screen.
And Michael, I'll second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
We're now in closed session, and let staff talk about how that's going to work.
Right. So Cody, Brian, go ahead and take the mic and tell us what happens next.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create what's called a breakout room within this meeting. And I'm going to send Joycelyn, Michael, John, Brent, and Michelle, and our designated staff into that breakout room. And so that's like a totally separate meeting, but it's a meeting within this meeting. So for those of you who are joining by computer, you should get a little prompt that says you've been put into a breakout room. Join now. Go ahead and click join now. John, since you are on the phone, it may prompt you to hit 1 or 2 to join the breakout room. It may also just send you there automatically. I can't remember from my trials, but I want to give you a heads up on that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create that breakout room and send you all into it.
So basically, if you get a prompt, acknowledge the prompt, but that should be all we have to do.
Hey, Brian, I am not seeing the boardroom as a room that I can assign to the breakout room.
Oh, wow. Um, that's a feature we should have. Um, since I'm not the main host, I can't create a breakout room. So, Steve and Teresa, are you the only two that are in the boardroom?
Yes.
Wow. You may have to connect with your laptops, and we can. I know, Steve, you already are, but you may have to connect. We may just have to send you in and then disconnect that boardroom setup for a
I
little
was going
bit.
to say, I can mute. I should be able to mute the boardroom, Brian.
Yeah. So that
okay.
may be what we have to do. So,
Okay.
And then we'll have to figure that out. So, but I'm pretty sure we were able to do that once before, right?
That one, I
I'm almost
don't
positive we
remember.
did.
I didn't get to test that, Brian.
Okay. Well, we'll check on it.
Okay. I'm going to send everyone into the breakout room now. Brian, text me if there are problems with this, and I'm going to go in and try to mute the boardroom, and I'll let you know once it's muted and if I can still hear you all.
Okay.
Sorry. I can still hear you all. Teresa, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, hold on just a second.